Fairy Mysteries by Ivakenas. Prologue. There once was a world tree that branched and rooted into various realms. Some honored it as the tree of life, love and light, while others forgot all about its existence. Such differences may have caused problems that resulted in one realm splitting into two. And that's what happened between the earth realm and the fairy realm. After a few human tribes began to feel superior and assert their dominance, the fairy folk grew tired of them. The initiators behind the split were the most ethereal fairy folk called the Light Elves. They decided to break away from humans and create a new, harmonious world that welcomed all who wished to join. First, the other elves came along, such as the tree elves, stone elves, then the flower pixies, forest gnomes, animals, and part fairy, part animal creatures like the fauns, centaurs, and merpeople. With time, countless interesting mixed species developed in the fairy realm. Fauns had children with elves, pixies with gnomes, and unicorns with dragons. The fairy realm became so unique and beautiful that it was admired even by the wisest beings in the world tree, such as the cat giants. The humanoid giants and trolls had their own realm to escape to, but some didn't want to leave the earth realm, and they weren't alone. Others refused to move away as well, mainly stubborn ones like the goblins, nomad giants, trolls, leshy, tree guards, and garden fairies. Many animals stayed behind too, especially those that could easily defeat humans. The ancient race of the eternal human and fairy ancestors stayed at first, but when the humans began to threaten them, they retreated into the realm that all earthlings originally came from, the inner earth, and henceforth became known as the inner earth beings. The spirits of air, fire, water, and earth, known as the elementals, inhabited both realms and presided over nature. After the split, the human and fairy realms stayed close in the world tree, separated by secret portals. At certain times of the year, especially in April and October, the veils between the realms became thin, and that's when even those who were usually oblivious could sense their invisible neighbors. And while humans turned history into a legend, the fairy folk remained well aware of their common ancestry. They deemed the earth realm dangerous yet alluring, and dared to visit it on occasion. Some did so just for fun, while others had important missions there. Two of these were the forest fairy Lindy and the unicorn Max, detective novices who were about to embark on the biggest adventure of their lives. The first mystery, the dragon. The fairy realm was a paradise, home to various ethereal beings living in harmony with each other and their surroundings. Lindy was one of them. She was a young fairy, only 100 years old, which amounted to 10 years of age in the earth realm, where time ran more slowly. She had just graduated from the Detective Academy and had become a part of the Detective Council established by the Light Elves and Cat Giants. Lindy was a mixed-race fairy, as she was the daughter of a linden tree elf and a forest faun, which is why she was born with horns that resembled linden branches. These branch-like horns changed with each season, and so in the spring and summer Lindy grew sweet-scented flowers on them, and in the autumn she shed leaves. The winters in the fairy realm were mild. Every year it seemed as if autumn just gradually changed into spring. One sunny day, Lindy's mentors summoned her to a meeting. She suspected that she was about to be given her first case, so she soon reached the town of the Light Elves, where the Detective Council's dome was located. The town stood on a big lake with a limestone base that cradled clear, turquoise water. Lindy liked to swim in the lake, but that day she just rushed past it. The houses were carved into the rocks, or built from stone, precious minerals, and clay. It was a unique place, as it was not common to see buildings in the fairy realm. The weather was mild the whole year round, so most fairy folk liked to sleep outside in beds made of moss with canopies that protected them from the rain. The Detective Council's dome was made of limestone blocks. Various wild flowers and herbs grew around it, tended by flower pixies and giant bumblebees. At the entrance, Lindy met with twin brothers, Bennu and Chehu, honorable members of the Detective Council and well-acclaimed professors at the Detective Academy. They were wise cat giants who were as tall as the 9-foot Light Elves and stood on their hind legs. Bennu and Chehu taught the detective students how to work with light, mainly how to shield themselves and others from the evil that resided in the less ethereal realms. Both Bennu and Chehu had black and white fur, but Bennu was whiter and had a black freckle above his left lip, while Chehu was darker. Bennu appeared older than Chehu, who resembled a kitten despite being 1,000 years old. Another cat giant in the Detective Council was Siberius. He regularly visited, although he lived in the Andromeda Galaxy, the original home of all the cat giants. Like Bennu and Chehu, he taught light shielding at the Academy. He looked similar to the twin brothers, but had striped grey fur and lion-like features, and he wore magical glasses that repelled any evil that came into his sight. "The others are waiting for you inside," said Bennu, and Chehu added, "We have some exciting news for you." "Is this it? Will I finally be given my first case?" asked Lindy impatiently. While Chehu just watched her with a mysterious smile, Bennu said, "Indeed, and it's quite a challenging case. Alfdis must have great faith in you." On hearing those words, Lindy felt even more elated. Alfdis was a light elf and one of the founders of the Detective Council. Her mission was to solve mysteries in the convoluted realms of the World Tree and rescue endangered species of fairy folk and animals. Like all the Light Elves, she was about 9 feet tall and had sharp pointed ears and long silvery white hair. Lindy couldn't wait to learn more, and so she followed Bennu and Chehu inside the dome. They passed through a corridor adorned with clay lanterns and soon reached the main chamber, which was filled with various quartz crystal balls hanging from the ceiling. It was a library that needed no books, because the crystals stored all stories, knowledge, and wisdom. The encoded information in the crystals simply permeated the mind on touch. Alfdis and Siberius were already there. When they noticed Lindy approaching with Bennu and Chehu, they stopped talking and smiled. Alfdis nodded a greeting, and, as was typical for her, she cut straight to the point. "Yesterday I stumbled upon a curious mystery in the Earth realm. It made me think of you because I know how much you love animals. The Earth realm is having some trouble with a dragon. It must be one of the last, or a visitor who decided to stay there, as we have not seen such a case since our realms split. Anyway, the humans claim that the dragon has been stealing their children. They suspect it eats them, but as you know, you can never fully trust humans and their prejudices. Therefore, we need to locate the dragon and find out whether it's dangerous. You should, under no circumstance, approach the dragon alone, as you are inexperienced when it comes to such wild beasts. You should return right away once you have located the dragon's den, and I will take care of the rest. Do you accept this case, or is it too daunting?" "I accept," said Lindy without giving it a second thought. "When do I leave?" "First you need to choose a partner, as I can't let you venture into that dangerous realm alone. Do you remember what I told you when we took a school trip there? So which one of your colleagues will you take with you?" "Definitely Max," said Lindy. Max was her best friend and fellow graduate student from the Detective Academy. He was a white unicorn with a crystal horn that gave him powerful inner sight. He could see glimpses of the past, present, and future, which was very useful for a detective. "Perfect!" exclaimed Alfdis. "Max will be a wonderful partner and guardian to you in the Earth realm. However, you should both travel in disguise, as I taught you." Lindy nodded. "Should we go through the same portal as we used during our school trips to the Earth realm?" "Yes, the ancient portal in the linden grove," confirmed Alfdis, and gave Lindy some more advice. "Once you are there, don't forget not only to look for clues, but also to pay attention to signs and symbols along the way, as they might be even more important. Oh, and use your fairy magic only when necessary, and never in front of beings you don't trust." Lindy agreed. Then she hugged Alfdis and the three cat giants and rushed back to her home forest to share the good news with her mum. Lindy's mum spent most of her time by the grand linden tree she guarded, while doing the thing she loved the most, bringing beautiful elven garments into existence using her fairy magic skills. "Hi, Mum," called out Lindy. "I just came from a meeting with Alfdis, and guess what? I've been given my first detective case ever. It's in the Earth realm, and it involves a dragon." "How extraordinary," said the graceful linden elf, and embraced her daughter proudly. "Just be careful, dear. You know that the human realm tends to be dangerous for us." "I know, Mum, but you needn't worry. I'm taking Max with me." "Oh, that's good," said Lindy's mum, smiling in relief. "You will be safe with Max. Unicorns naturally repel evil." Lindy's mum had known Max since he was a foal, as he was born shortly before Lindy, and the three loved each other very much. "I will wrap up some fresh pixie bread for you," said Lindy's mum, hurrying away to prepare the highly nutritious snack made from wheat, dew, and flower honey. Lindy thanked her mum and grabbed the scarf-wrapped pixie bread. She made sure not to forget her magical linden staff, which had been recharging by her mother's tree. "Has Dad come by yet?" she asked as she was leaving. Lindy's mum shrugged. She seemed unconcerned with the whereabouts of the wild fawn, as the two had never worked out as a couple. "Don't expect him to visit us any time soon," she advised Lindy. "You know how he is." Lindy nodded, then kissed her mum goodbye and leapt up in the air to look over the forest. She located Max by the glow of his crystal horn that could be seen from miles away. He was bathing in his favorite stream, surrounded by pixies and brightly colored dragonflies. When he saw Lindy approaching, he greeted her with that typical welcome of his, a movement of the head from one side to the other, a lifting of his horn into the air, and a jolly neigh. He startled the pixies, and some of them fell into the stream, but the dragonflies quickly picked them up again. Although Max was a young unicorn, he was as wise and knowledgeable as most of his kind. Lindy beckoned for Max to come with her, and as they walked through the forest together, she told him about the case. Max agreed to follow her to the Earth realm. They both longed to finally start working as detectives instead of just learning about it. And so, without further ado, they set off to the linden grove, where 4 linden trees and their elven guardians watched over the portal to the earth realm. Another elf guarded the portal itself. Alfdis had already informed him about the two detective novices and their mission, so he let them pass. Lindy and Max waited until a portal of light had manifested before them and simply walked through it. It was quite easy for the fairy realm inhabitants to travel into the earth realm because they had bodies of light, which were more adaptable than physical ones. As a result, fairy realm inhabitants could easily shift between the realms and take on any physical form they liked. It was always a strange sensation to permeate the earth realm, though. It felt like putting on a heavy winter coat, as the physical form was much denser than the light form. Moreover, the ground pulled them down in that realm, and they could not hover above it as they did in their world. Alfdis called this sensation the gravity. Lindy manifested a human body for herself, and Max decided to be a type of dog that humans called a golden retriever. He kept his magical horn, just shrunk it a bit so that it wouldn't be too noticeable. Unicorns used to inhabit both the earth and fairy realms until humans began hunting them down for their magnificent horns, so it was better for Max not to show it off. Lindy chose to take on the appearance of a 10-year-old girl, which corresponded to her 100 years of age in the fairy realm. She had to lose her branch horns, and her skin changed from soft green to light beige, which was common for the inhabitants of the region they had appeared in called Bohemia. Her long golden curls remained the same, as did her emerald green eyes. Lindy set her magical linden staff on the ground and looked around. She already knew how the earth realm looked and felt, so it didn't surprise her that it was not as colorful as her world, and that the sun didn't shine as brightly there. The light elf guardian had vanished along with the linden elves. In the earth realm, each of the 4 trees stood at the edge of 4 well-trodden paths that led in 4 different directions. "We have to decide which path to take," said Lindy. Max concentrated his attention on his horn and allowed it to recharge in sunlight, activating its magic. Even though his inner sight was not as clear in the earth realm, he could still receive glimpses of visions. "I see a smooth, green, mossy hill with scattered rocks atop," he said, "but I don't see anything else." He tried to focus some more and finally announced, "I sense a cave on the top of that hill, and I hear someone snoring. It must be the dragon. It's asleep in the cave." "That sounds about right. Dragons like to sleep in caves," said Lindy with a smile. "Do you have a vision about how to locate it?" Max shook his head. "That's all I'm able to see for now. My inner sight always feels so blurred here." Lindy looked ahead at the path that led to the forest. "Perhaps we should ask the local forest animals for help." Max was up for it, and so they set off down the hawthorn-lined path. On the way, they observed the environment. Nature in the earth realm was green and lush, just like in the fairy realm, but it was duller. There were no flower pixies over the meadows, nor any dragons in the sky. And the gnomes were hidden away in the earth or inside mushrooms. And so they entered the forest, hoping to stumble upon some friendly animals that could help them. Lindy noticed 4 branches forming an 8-pointed star on the ground and stopped Max. "Look at this star, Max. Remember what they taught us at the Detective Academy?" Max nodded. "That any sign we spot in nature matters." Suddenly, the sound of weeping caught their attention. They followed the noise and noticed a graceful, copper-haired woman sitting on a fallen branch, sobbing. Beside her, a man was trying to comfort her. "Calm down, darling. There's a chance that the beast dropped him somewhere. We could still find him." Lindy cleared her throat and approached them. "Excuse me, are you all right? Can we help you in any way?" The couple jumped at the sight of them. "You shouldn't be here. The area is not safe," warned the woman, and the man added, "A dragon has settled nearby and has stolen many children." "Do you know where the dragon lives?" asked Lindy. The woman shook her head. "Nobody has managed to locate the beast so far, as it seems to travel from place to place, stealing children from all the settlements. The locals say it's a man-eating dragon. Oh, it's so awful." She broke down in tears again. The man was just as troubled and seemed concerned about Lindy. "Why are you out here alone, child? Are you lost?" "Not at all," said Lindy briskly. "I just prefer to travel alone with my dog. He's a wonderful protector and guide." The man smiled. "Where do you live?" Max told Lindy not to lie and just say that they lived far away. The couple couldn't hear Max because humans had lost their ability to communicate with animals long ago. Lindy nodded to Max in agreement and turned back to the man with her explanation. "We came from far away, but don't worry about us. We will be all right." "I really hope so, child," said the woman, sobbing. "I wouldn't like to see you up there in the dragon's claws like I saw our son." She wailed again, and the man embraced her more tightly. All the fairy folk were born with a strong sense of empathy, but Lindy was especially compassionate, so she tried to comfort the woman. "Try not to worry about your son. Not all dragons eat children. At least not alive," remarked Max. Lindy shot him a disapproving glance, even though she was the only one who could hear him. "It's the truth," Max said honestly. "They usually burn or drown their victims first, depending on whether they are fire or water dragons. Don't forget that over here dragons are not as kind and feed off other living beings." The woman continued to cry, and the man, spared of hearing about dragon killing methods, squeezed Lindy's hand and said, "Thank you, child." "What is your son's name, in case we meet him?" asked Lindy. "It's Kian. His name is Kian," said the woman and burst into tears again. The man helped the woman stand up and seemed about to take her home, so Max quickly reminded Lindy, "Weren't you going to ask them something?" "Oh yes," Lindy said. "Wait, please could you tell us if there's a smooth, green, mossy hill with rocks scattered atop somewhere nearby?" The couple turned to them and looked at each other in thought. "There are many such hills," said the man. "Could you tell us where the nearest one is?" "It's down the path, heading west. If you follow the setting sun, you'll see it as soon as you walk out of this forest." "Thank you," said Lindy, "and I hope you find your son soon." The couple waved them goodbye, and Lindy set off, matching Max's nimble pace. Those humans seemed nice, but it's best to avoid contact with their kind. They always pry too much. Animals don't do that. Lindy shrugged. "Well, the 8-pointed star was clearly a sign, and we heard her crying soon after we saw it, so I feel as if we were meant to meet them. You might be right, but just as my abilities are partly numbed in this realm, your fairy intuition and magic are also less powerful here." To test her magic, Lindy waved her magical linden staff in the air. The staff rose from her hand, and she could sense the air elementals lifting it softly above her palms. She couldn't see them, but they could see her. There was still a connection, though less tangible. Max watched it with an expert eye and said, "So far so good, Lindy. This realm may surprise us yet." Lindy and Max followed the couple's advice and walked toward the setting sun. When they stepped out of the forest, they noticed a green hill with a few rocks scattered atop right ahead. "Could this be the one?" asked Lindy. "Maybe we should definitely check it out." And they hurried toward the hill, but the sun had already sunk below the horizon when they reached the footpath that led upward. "There won't be light for much longer," said Max. "Perhaps we should rest and wait until sunrise." "But we are almost there," argued Lindy. "Let's at least check if there's a cave nearby." "I don't want to take the risk, Lindy. I promised myself to protect you, not only from the dragon, but also from your own mulishness." Lindy sighed. She was about to agree when she noticed some flowers nearby and realized something. "Look, an 8-leaf flower, like the 8-pointed star we saw right before we met the human couple. It's another sign." Max sniffed the flower thoughtfully. It made him sneeze. Then he looked back at the place where Lindy had been standing and saw that she was gone. She was in the distance, already speeding up the hill. "Don't you remember what Alfdis told us?" he called after her. "That a detective needs to follow her instincts," Lindy shouted back. There was no use arguing with Lindy, and Max knew that better than anyone. She was zealous about everything she put her mind to, so he followed her like he always did. When they finally reached the hilltop, they searched the scattered rocks but found no cave. Although they were partly relieved not to encounter the dragon, they felt disappointed at the same time. Lindy sat on the ground and sighed. "Oh well, at least we have found a place to spend the night." "Wait a moment," said Max. "Isn't this—" He sniffed the ground, then exclaimed, "I recognize the scent. A dragon was here." Max's clue filled Lindy with hope, and so they joined forces to look around for more evidence. Lindy noticed that the grass was flat in one place and wondered aloud, "Could the dragon have lain here?" Max agreed. "Yes, it looks like it. And the trail smells fresh. The dragon can't be far away." They both scanned the horizon and the darkening landscape. The evening sky made Lindy drowsy. She realized that perhaps it was a good idea to rest. After all, fairy folk had the gift of prophetic dreams, so she might find some clues in her sleep. And Lindy truly did receive some guidance that night. She dreamt of descending the footpath on the western side of the hill and seeing a cave at the bottom. When the dawn woke her, she found Max sitting beside her, warming her body. She looked at his pensive face and asked if he was all right. "I couldn't sleep," said Max, "so I searched the area and located another mossy, rocky hilltop. Look, it's over there." He pointed his crystal horn toward the distant hill. "I can see it, but maybe we don't have to go anywhere at all. I think I saw the dragon cave in my dream. It was at the bottom of the hill on the western side." "But in my vision, the cave was on the top," argued Max. "Well, you know that visions can be unclear in this realm." "But same goes for prophetic dreams," he retorted. Suddenly they heard a soft, squeaky sound. A hedgehog was shuffling through the undergrowth, snuffling and muttering. "Quiet, quiet! We are used to quiet up here. Hurry to the cave already." "Is there a cave at the foot of this hill?" asked Lindy, approaching the hedgehog. "Yes," he squeaked, and continued to go about his business, searching the ground for breakfast and repeating, "We are used to peace and quiet around here." Lindy gave Max a victorious smile, but he stood his ground. "You know very well never to trust a hedgehog." Lindy laughed. "Have you just made that up?" The two could quarrel only for so long. So Lindy embraced Max, and he nudged her face with his nose, which was his way of kissing her. As they descended to the bottom of the hill, Lindy noticed an 8-pointed star carved into one of the rocks. She showed it to Max, and they both agreed that if they saw the same symbol 3 times, it was definitely a sign that they were on the right path. They both sensed that the dragon could be near, although they had still not come across any caves. They wandered around and looked into every crevice and crack in the rocks, but there was no sign of an underground entrance. Lindy carried on searching, while Max rested under a nearby tree, The fact that he hadn't slept the night before was beginning to show. "It must be here somewhere," insisted Lindy. "It may be smaller or narrower than we thought." "Come on, Lindy. How could such a giant beast crawl into a narrow crack?" said Max, chuckling. "You are right, but I feel we are in the right spot." "Are you having a conversation with a dog?" a voice asked. Lindy and Max both jumped up and turned to face a boy around Lindy's age. He was descending from behind one of the rocks and walking over to them. "I also speak to animals sometimes," he said, "but in your case it sounds like they talk back, which seems a bit crazy if you ask me." "Well, no one did ask you," remarked Max, while Lindy quietly watched the boy who had appeared out of the blue as though he had just exited one of the rocks. He had messy brown hair and blue, soulful eyes. "Where have you come from?" she asked. "Ah, I've been just hanging out in a cave with a dragon," he said, leaning against the rock with his arms crossed. Lindy and Max looked at each other in surprise. "The question is, what are you two doing here?" he asked. "Well, actually, we have been looking for a cave and a dragon," admitted Lindy. "Probably the one you are here with." "What do you want with her?" inquired the boy. "I protect her when she sleeps." "So it's a dragoness," marveled Lindy. "Is she not dangerous?" "No, she's very kind. People misunderstand her. She has indeed kidnapped me, but that's because she thought I was lost. She has been nurturing me as her own young. She brings me food, protects me, and for some reason she loves to lick me too." "Perhaps she can't have young herself and needs to mother someone," suggested Lindy. The boy shrugged. "Maybe. She's just so sweet, and I'm afraid that someone will hurt her out of fear or prejudice." "Don't worry, we can help you both," affirmed Lindy and turned to Max. "Let's find out what she eats first," said Max. "She may not like children, but she could have a taste for dog or unicorn meat." Lindy smiled at Max's fears and asked the boy what the dragoness ate. "She eats only animal carcasses," he answered. "I've never seen her eat a living thing. And sometimes, when I make a fire at night, she eats the flames. Once I even caught her eating sun rays. I thought it was odd, but she simply closed her eyes against the sun, opened her mouth, and swallowed the stream of sunlight." "So she must be a fire dragon," noted Max, and then asked, "Who is this boy, though? Could he belong to the couple we met in the forest?" "Oh, true!" exclaimed Lindy, and the boy tilted his head in confusion. "What's true? Is your name Kian by any chance?" The boy's eyes widened. "How do you know that? We met your parents. They are so worried for you." Kian sighed. "I can imagine. I would like to go to them, but the dragoness won't let me. I seem to be her favorite, as she kept me even after she returned all the other children to their homes." "I will reason with her," said Lindy confidently, which made Kian laugh. "You really believe you can talk to animals?" "I don't believe so, I know so," answered Lindy. "Now, where is the dragoness?" "In the cave in the center of the hill. The best entrance is over there, on the path halfway up." Lindy and Max smiled at each other, so they were both right in a way. "We make a good team, Max," said Lindy with a smile. "We complement each other." Kian waved, and they followed him. However, as they were walking up the hill, Max suddenly stopped. "We can't go. We promised Alfdis we would only locate the dragon. Don't you remember her warning?" "Oh, please," laughed Lindy. "It's a gentle dragon who loves children. If she doesn't harm children, why would she harm a unicorn or a dog?" Kian just shook his head. He couldn't hear Max's voice, so it seemed as if Lindy was just babbling to herself about dogs and unicorns. What a weird girl, he thought. Weird but interesting. Kian took them to the cave, and right by the entrance was the sleeping dragoness. She was one of the feathered dragon species that was part lizard and part bird. Her feathers were pure black and sparkled with rainbow-like colors in the sunshine. She seemed young, as she was only about twice the size of them. Kian patted her on the nose, and the dragoness responded by sniffing and licking him in her sleep. Then she opened her eyes and noticed the intruders, which woke her up completely. She stood up and growled at them. Lindy and Max quickly hid behind the rock, their bravery suddenly vanishing. "I told you this was a bad idea," complained Max. Lindy was beginning to think the same, but remained optimistic. "Maybe she just needs to sniff us first," she said. As if the dragoness had heard her, she approached them and began to smell them. Max trembled as the beast's big jaws came close to his face. "We come in peace, beautiful dragoness," said Lindy timidly. "Your friend Kian brought us here. He's your favorite, right?" The dragoness tilted her head and replied, "Yes, he's my boy. I understand that you two like each other very much and that you have been taking excellent care of him, but his real parents are terrified for him and miss him. He belongs with them," said Lindy. She could sense that the dragoness felt guilty and embarrassed about taking Kian from his parents, but she also knew that she didn't want to let him go. The dragoness turned to Max and sniffed him again. "You don't smell like a dog. Who are you?" "I'm a unicorn disguised as a dog," squeaked Max, terrified by the great beast. "Oh, I remember the unicorns. They used to live here with us. I have always liked them." Max shook a little and said, "I hope not for food." The dragoness grinned at him, slowly opening her huge jaws to tease him a bit, but finally just settling for a lick. Max put up with it, even though his whole body stiffened in anticipation of what could come next. "And who are you?" asked the dragoness with a tentative look at Lindy. "You don't smell like a human child." "Are you both in some kind of disguise?" "Yes, I'm a forest fairy, the daughter of a tree elf and a faun. We came from the realm where most unicorns and dragons found refuge eons ago." Lindy wanted to go on speaking, but Kian broke her thoughts. "What are you saying? Are you a fairy?" "Oh no, Lindy," exclaimed Max. "Don't you remember? Humans can't know who we are and where we came from." Lindy covered her mouth in shock, and they all looked at Kian, who was watching them with a partly amused and partly perplexed expression. Lindy gaped at him, wondering what to say next. She couldn't lie. That was utterly alien to her, but neither could she tell the truth. "It's all right," said the dragoness to calm her down. "Children are more open-minded and trustworthy than adults. And even if he says something to the adults, they won't believe him. Adults only listen to half of what children say, particularly if they are talking about something they don't understand. Then they consider it just wild imagination." "You are right," said Max, nodding with relief. "From what I have witnessed in this realm, grown-up humans are far more ignorant and limited than children." "And than animals," added the dragoness. "Animals are blessed," said Lindy. "It's such a pity that so many of them became extinct in this realm because humans hunted them down or feared them like they fear you dragons. That's why we came to offer you shelter. The Light Elves have invited you to come with us to live peacefully in our realm." The dragoness narrowed her eyes, weighing up their proposal. "Most animals love the fairy realm because it's so harmonious," explained Max. "And although this realm offers more adventure, it can be rough and cruel, particularly to misunderstood beasts such as yourself." "Well, I could do without the huntsmen and the goblins," said the dragoness, sighing. "But I can't leave without him." She turned to Kian and cuddled up against him. Despite sympathizing with the dragoness, Lindy had to reason with her too. "I empathize with you, great dragoness, but think about it. The human huntsman could eventually find you, And can you imagine what would happen if they shot arrows at you with Kian around? The dragoness shook her head. Don't put that thought into my mind. If you come with us, you will have a clear conscience. You will save yourself as well as Kian. And since she finally had the dragoness's full attention, she added, I can sense that you have a good heart. You must know that letting Kian go is the right thing to do. The dragoness sighed, and the impact of her powerful breath made both Max and Lindy fall to the ground. Kian patted her head and said, As you are truly able to communicate with this strange girl, my dragoness, I wonder if you can understand me as well. The dragoness nodded and looked into his eyes with all the love she felt for him. Kian smiled. I want you to know that I care for you very much, but if I stay with you, I will miss my parents and home, and I will always be worried for you around the local huntsmen. The dragoness closed her eyes and let him pet her some more. All right, she whispered sadly and looked at Lindy. I will have to let my boy Kian go. Let's take him home. Lindy and Max decided that it would be best to let the dragoness carry them closer to Kian's home. Therefore, they waited until the moon replaced the sun in the sky so they could travel safely and unseen. Then Lindy and Kian crawled onto the dragoness's back while she gently gripped Max between her claws. Lindy had never ridden a dragon before, so she tried to enjoy the moment. However, she was also slightly worried, as she knew very well that the physical form of a human being was much more fragile than the light body of a fairy. In the earth realm, beings were susceptible to injury, illness, and early death. In the fairy realm, the inhabitants could rejuvenate and heal themselves whenever they needed it. Kian was already used to riding the dragoness and was cheerfully asking Lindy questions. Are you really a fairy? Where do you come from? How did you get here? Why did you come? Lindy smiled at his vain attempt to learn more, because she could only give him one answer. I can't say. And what about the dog? Asked Kian. Is he also from your world? You said something about unicorns earlier. Is he a unicorn in disguise? Lindy kept smiling, hoping he'd stop prying. It's true, right? Pressed Kian. That's why he has that small crystal horn on his forehead. I thought it was strange, even considered whether he was half goat, but I didn't want to offend him or anything. Lindy chuckled. She finally gave up and shared more than she was supposed to. His horn is even bigger in our realm, and it glows in rainbow colors, just like our sun, which is huge, but has a softer light than the one in your world. Wow, that sounds like a fairy tale. What's a fairy tale? Asked Lindy, as she hadn't heard the term before. I suppose you don't know what a fairy tale is because you live in one, mused Kian with a glance at Max, who was looking petrified in the claws of the beast, hoping that the nightmare would soon be over. After some time flying, Kian pointed at a wooden and clay cottage partly concealed by trees and shrubs. The dragoness landed at a safe distance from Kian's home, released Max, and let the other two passengers jump down from her back. Kian gave her a firm hug and said, Thank you, my dragoness. I will miss you so much. She let out a soft whimper and turned away as she couldn't stand to see him leave her. Kian approached Lindy with teary eyes. Will you promise to take good care of her for me? Of course, she will be safe in our realm. Kian looked at the dragoness and sighed. Will we see each other again? You and the dragoness? Probably not, said Lindy truthfully, which made Kian very sad. And will I see you again? He asked. I don't think so, replied Lindy with a tentative glance at Max. Kian nodded. He understood, even expected her to say that, yet he couldn't help but feel disappointed, as he could sense that the four of them could become good friends. He patted Max goodbye and took one last look at his beloved dragoness. Although he was reluctant, he knew that it was time to go home. Lindy watched him leave, then suddenly called after him, Wait, Kian, Kian turned to her with hopeful eyes and took a few steps back to face her again. Lindy extended her hand and offered him a wooden whistle hanging from a silver cord. "Wear it around your neck. It's a magic whistle that we are allowed to give only to those whom we trust and those who may need our help in the future. If you blow the whistle, I will hear you and come over. However, you can only call me if you need a detective. That's the rule." "So you are a detective too?" asked Kian, surprised. "Yes, but we only come here to solve what you humans call supernatural cases. Promise not to take advantage of this gift, as that could get me into a lot of trouble." "I promise," said Kian solemnly, and put the silver cord with the whistle around his neck. "What should I say to my parents if they asked me about it?" Lindy shrugged. "Try not to say too much, but don't lie to them either." "All right, I'll just tell them that it was a gift from my saviors and friends," said Kian. Lindy smiled at him and set off after Max, who had already started to walk away. Kian waved after them, sad about parting with his dragoness, but delighted at the possibility of seeing Lindy and Max again. The dragoness trailed behind Lindy and Max, wretched over leaving Kian. She kept turning back with tears in her eyes. In her mind, she promised herself that she would find a way back to her favorite boy one day. Max meanwhile rubbed Lindy's hand lovingly and said, "You did well, Lindy. I'm proud of you." "Well, I wouldn't be able to do this without you, Max." She planted a grateful kiss on his forehead and followed him down the starlit path that led to the ancient portal in the linden grove.